Good morning. I'm Byron Arthur. I am the President and Chief Executive Officer of the Dolores Taylor Arthur School for Young Men. It is my pleasure to welcome you to this morning's Black History debate featuring the Arthur School. I would like to invite you to our opening, Mr. Blair, Dr. Haley of Blairisms.
Good morning. Good morning. And happy Black History Month. Happy Black History Month. So, Dr. Maya Angelou said that history, despite its wrenching pain, cannot be unlived, yet if faced with courage, need not be lived again. I think that quote is extremely powerful as we approach the subject today that the extraordinary gentleman from the Dolores Taylor Arthur School will be debating. I am excited and honored to be here in partnership with Dr. Williams and NOLA Public Schools, and in partnership with Mr. Arthur and the Arthur School to present the Black History Month debate. This installation is the second of a series of Black History Month events produced in partnership with NOLA Public Schools. We were joined earlier this month by the scholars at Bethune Elementary, where they participated in a Black History Quiz Bowl, where we, the adults, left the room smarter than we came. I anticipate nothing less today from these extraordinary young men. And so with that, I would like to introduce and welcome to the stage, who, again, Blairisms is excited and honored to be in partnership for this event, Dr. Avis Williams, the proud superintendent of NOLA Public Schools.
Good morning. This is such an exciting day. Some of you may know that my core values are equity, excellence, and joy. And nothing brings my heart joy more than when I get to see all of my core values come to life in one event, because I certainly see that as the case today. I've had the pleasure of meeting many of the young men that will be debating today, and I'm super excited and proud of each and every one of you for the work that you've done to prepare for this and for the experience that you're going to give each and every one of us as you delve in this debate. Thank you to our judges. Thank you so much to the board members and to the team from the Arthur School. And thank you to the Blairisms for your support and partnership in this effort. On behalf of all of Orleans Parish School Board, as well as NOLA Public Schools, I bid you welcome. I say thank you, and I'm super excited to see this come to fruition. Thank you so much.
Today's a great day of first. We're certainly excited about the first woman to lead NOLA Public Schools full-time, Dr. Avis Williams. And now join me in bringing up another trailblazer, the first African-American president of this fine institution, my alma mater, Loyola University, Dr. Xavier Cole.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Well, it's indeed a pleasure to welcome you all to Loyola, particularly your young men who are debating today and all those who have prepared them. Thank you, Dr. Williams, Dr. Arthur, for thinking of us as a site for this wonderful debate. It's appropriate during Black History Month for us to do this particular work that we're going to see and witness today. The topic that the young men will be arguing is timely, certainly relevant. And they may not know this because they're still a little bit young in age, but wise in intellect. It wasn't so long ago that history was only from the winners. History was only from European whites, and history was only from those educated to write it down. There's a deep oral tradition in the Black community where education, being informed, being up to date was coming from the pulpits of churches. You, young men, are in a long, long oral tradition. But several years ago, I'd say around maybe 50, 60 years ago, my wife Suzanne is here, also a historian. We started to look at histories from people whose voices had been silenced. Histories from people of identities of color, people who are Black, brown, indigenous, also women. Prior to, say, 80 years ago, maybe 100 years ago? Those histories weren't written. And it's amazing the stories that are told when they're told from the perspective of those that lived it. This is a real honor. So I'm very happy to be here during that time. Also, it is very fitting to host this debate on this Jesuit Catholic campus. What's about to happen here is really the hallmark of what we Jesuit Catholics call eloquentia perfecta. Eloquentia perfecta, perfect eloquence, to read with clarity and comprehension, to write with intention to communicate simply but completely, to speak with clarity and command of language, and to critically think about the context and have curiosity about the issue. That seems to be at the core of debate. Wouldn't you say, gentlemen? So it also prepares you well for Loyola Law School. Did you know? You may not know that there's a program where you can enter pre-law and be admitted directly into Loyola Law if you meet all of your academic criteria. We would like to see all of you join us and put these skills that you're honing today to the test. Love to see you become part of the Esquire community of this town and contribute back to this region, this city, your communities. So again, thank you so much for coming to us today. It is our honor to host you. And gentlemen, good luck. I know that you will debate with fervor, passion, but also civility, as you've been taught. Peace and blessings.
Dr. Cole, don't go too far just yet. With Dr. Avis Williams, Superintendent of NOLA Public Schools, and Cynthia Butler McIntyre, one of the founding trustees of the Arthur School, and as she would have me say, the 24th National President of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. Would you please come up and make a presentation to Dr. Cole? Dr. Cole, we'd like to thank you and Ms. Sharonda Williams for the hard work in making sure that we had this venue in this wonderful place. And on behalf of NOLA Public Schools and the Arthur School, we would present you with this token of our appreciation.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
So before we get rolling, one last bit of welcome from the Vice Chairman of the Board of the Dolores Taylor Arthur School for Young Men, Mr. Carlos Calix.
Good morning, everyone, and good morning, students. We're so excited to hear your thoughts and your words and experience the preparation that you've put into today. As Vice Chair of the Board of Trustees, it's an honor to serve the Arthur School, to serve Byron, and with all of those that think about you daily. We put our love and our thoughts as to how to make this environment that you have entrusted us with at the Dolores Taylor Arthur School for Young Men and make it the most thriving campus for you and with you. But to our distinguished guests, I'll start with you. Thank you so much for being here, our great panel, and all those mentioned before. The one thing I want to say about the Arthur School before we hear from these young men is that as a young school, we continue to evolve as we should. We continue to improve every day as we should. And at the heart of that evolution, at the heart of the core of our school is debate. The skills that you are exercising, the skills of preparation, the skills, as Dr. Cole put it, thinking logically, writing logically, and being able to communicate clearly are things that you'll be able to take with you, skills you'll be able to take with you in whatever endeavor you choose as your future. So I wish you luck. Not that it's needed. I know you've prepared very well, but we look forward to hearing your words and your thoughts. So with that, thank you all very, very much.
Thank you. I'd like to introduce the ladies and gentlemen who have come today to adjudicate this debate, not just pick a winner, but give feedback. Starting over here, from the Louisiana Fifth Circuit Court of Appeal, a member of our 2017 Society at the Arthur School, which means that is someone who's given of their time and their talent and their treasure in the school's founding and in its continued growth, the Honorable Frederica Homburg Wicker. I told you it was a morning of first. I'm real proud of this. The first African-American woman elected state court judge in the parish of Jefferson. Another one of our 2017 society members, graduate of Loyola University, the Honorable June Berry Darrensburg. We're blessed to have institutions that are willing to invest in education in our community. The Booth Bricker Fund is one of those. They have a strong commitment to what's happening in our schools, particularly in the Arthur School. Join us this morning in welcoming Ms. Ann Banos, the Executive Director of the Booth Bricker Fund. It's always nice to have a former debater around. One of my students, one of the gentlemen I'm very proud of, former state champion in debate, president of the Earhart Group, and the newest member of the Board of Trustees of the Dolores Taylor Arthur School, Mr. Mark Earhart. You've already had the opportunity to meet Mr. Carlos Calix, Vice President at Astor University, at Astor Hospital. Thank you very much for being here. Traveling here from Georgia, an outstanding debate mind, former coach at the University of Georgia, someone who is now a hard and tireless worker at the National Speech and Debate Association main office, the very talented and brilliant Ms. Shante Jordan. Moderating today's debate is one of our lifetime's great debate minds, the first African-American elected to the National Speech and Debate Association Hall of Fame, the coach of Team USA in the most recent World Championships of Debate, traveling here from the Green Hill School in Dallas to see us, Mr. Aaron Timmons. Last but certainly not least, I'll introduce the debaters and their coaches. Gentlemen, I told y'all to come stand by him. Thank you. Good Lord. Dock some checks here. The gentleman upholding the proposition or the affirmative or however you'd like to call it We have first Mr. Christian Warren. Mr. Derek Norris. Coached by Mr. Jeffrey Swift, assistant debate coach at the Arthur School. I should tell you all that we're very proud of both of these young men. This weekend they traveled to the district literary rally, and both of them will represent NOLA Public Schools and the Dolores Taylor Arthur School at the state literary rally in American government and in geometry. The proposition, coached by Mr. Blake Ziegler, the Associate Director of Debate at the Arthur School. We have Mr. Jordan Brown. And Mr. Jaden Williams. Mr. Timmons, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Mr. Arthur. I'm incredibly excited to be here because so many times we see our young men, particularly our young men of color, on the field, the court, or the diamond. It's very nice to see them in a debate. Some have called it full contact social studies. I think you will find that to be the case here. A little bit about the format. There will be six 6-minute speeches given by the students. There is side proposition, which is supporting the motion, side opposition, which is opposing or negating the motion. You then will have 2 final reply speeches that are 3 minutes in length, where they will attempt to convince us that they are indeed correct. One thing that is unique about this format is something called a point of information, where they get to interrupt the speaker. The speaker then has control as to how they want to engage that. They may say yes, at which point the other side may advance a question or a statement. They can say, give them a teacher finger, hold on just a second, finish their statement, then engage in the point, or they can just say no, or just wave them down. So I thought it was important to indicate how a point of information is somewhat unique in that they will attempt to engage the other side as they are speaking. I think you will find the students will engage in equity, excellence, and joy, and we look forward to hearing the first speaker for the proposition for a time of no more than 6 minutes. Hear, hear.
I am Derek Norris. I'll be giving the first speech of this debate. Before I start, is anybody not ready? All right. Because education is the salvation of the soul, we proudly propose today's resolution. Resolved, race-specific curriculum should be included in K-12 education in the United States. The impacts of this round should be derived from race-specific curriculum and its contribution to society, i.e., how does the experience of having progress through a curriculum that includes race-specific courses affect students and their communities? This looks like ethnic/race-specific courses and history classes with all pathways, including African American history or African American studies. Any additional race-specific course options are to be created by school district level diversity and inclusion boards and chosen via a district-wide teacher, student, and parent vote, with examples including Latin American studies, Chinese American history, and Jewish American history, and etc. Thus, we prioritize the impacts that affect racial minorities and their communities. Team Proposition does not defend the implementation without fidelity, but will weigh impacts of side opposition's highest ground and against the advantages of the side propositions. Finally, the burden of side opposition must be to prove why we should not passed the motion, meaning that race-specific curriculum should not be implemented in K-12 education schools in the U.S. It is not enough to prove that there are drawbacks to side proposition. Side opposition must prove that those drawbacks outweigh the benefits of voting for side propositions on the motion. The first argument is exposure to race-specific curriculum increases civic engagement. Before a team proposition can begin to posit the benefits of being civic engagement, we must define what that means. Dr. Michael Caprini of the University of Pennsylvania defines civic engagement as, for the American Psychological Association, as an individual and collective actions designed to identify and address issues of public concern. But I hear dissent.
Why does the proposition call for us to rank races?
We're not necessarily saying rank races. What we're trying to say, we're not saying that we should rank races. What we're trying to say is that what's going to happen is there's going to be a vote. As I stated in my framework, there's going to be a vote district-wide on who's going to be, what subjects are going to be talked about, meaning like basically based on mostly popularity or the population. Thus, side proposition argues that students who have exposure to an educational model that includes race-specific courses increases the likelihood that those students become civically engaged. This can be explained in two intuitive ways. Firstly, exposure to other people's history humanizes their experience, increasing empathy for other people and of different backgrounds. This directly results in community members embracing and problem-solving the issue and solving these issues of others as their own. Albert M. Carmelio, found director of the Center of Comparative Studies in Race and Ethnicity at Stanford University, articulates that race-specific curriculum helps students see themselves and each other as a part of the narrative of the United States by affirming the identities and contributions of marginalized groups in our society. As a result, improved civic engagement results in better democracy and more representative democratic processes. The Center of American Progress explains that a strong civics education in K-12 school is key to developing and promoting civic action. It teaches students to see the importance of becoming effective citizens and active participants in their democracy. And the American Bar Association writes, the civic education that includes teaching on racism and the contributions of racial and ethnic groups to the United States history can help minority students navigate barriers to civic life and civic engagement, such as voter suppression and disenfranchisement. Secondly, understanding systematic issues faced by different communities is a prerequisite to an integrated community. Dr. James A. Banks, founding director of the University of Washington Banks Center for Education Justice, writes that a pluralist society must learn to accept their own ethnic identity and to become comfortable with it. They must also learn to function effectively within other ethnic groups, cultures, and to respond positively to individuals who belong to other ethnic groups. Our second argument is appreciation. Students seeking themselves representation in the curriculum they are taught is necessary foundation to a meaningful education. Moreover, exposure to identities not your own in that education is the bedrock of a tolerant and diverse democracy like our own. And our third information is misinformation. Third argument is misinformation. Among the public on race is high and has always been like this. Throughout the years in America, black people and other minorities constantly have their history misunderstood. The proposition has a solution, and that could help fight the problem and allow the other students to do so. This is especially impactful on the youth. Students learn most of their history during K-12, and most information learned in these years shape their perspective. And with that, I proudly propose today's motion. Thank you.
Hear, hear. We thank the speaker for those fine remarks. We'd now like to invite the first speaker for the opposition to begin the debate for their side of the House. Hear, hear.
Morning, everybody. I am Jaden Williams, and I'll be defending the opposition. Before I begin, I'd like to give a quick rundown. So, as the opposition, I'm going to get into the constructive of why this isn't really the best plan for the proposition. So before I begin, is anybody not ready? All right. Because education policy must grapple with reality and not fantasy, we proudly oppose. Before moving on to our arguments, we offer the following observations. First, side proposition must defend the implementation of the resolution, considering the consequence of an action is necessary to evaluate its success. If side opposition demonstrates the proposition's model will cause more harm than good, that's sufficient to vote for us. Second, our problem with the proposition is not that race should be excluded from curriculum. Rather, we criticize their approach to implementing their model. Our first argument is false hope. Regardless of how the proposition implements the resolution, the results will be counterproductive. The proposition puts faith in an unfaithful government. Historically, the government has actively contributed to black people's oppression, slavery, Jim Crow, voter discrimination, mass incarceration, and more proof. This shows we should be skeptical to government action directed at racial groups, and the proposition is no different. They claim to solve racism by including it in the curriculum, but fail to address structural barriers in education that hurt black students. Michael J. Dumas, assistant professor at UC Berkeley, 2017. For the past 100 years, federal and state legislators, local officials, and predominantly white citizen groups have used various strategies to ensure that black children are deprived of equitable education. Black children, parents, and teachers have long been subject to anti-black violence and harassment in schools. Black students are more likely to be punished for other students for the same infractions, and punished more harshly. Black students are less likely to be considered for gifted and talented programs. Black children are viewed as more violent, more controllable, and least able to grasp complex ideas. It does not matter if race is in the curriculum if black students are not in the room because they're suspended. The proposition offers a false promise to black students by assuring them they will be represented in the curriculum, while ignoring how the education...
Point of information.
I'll get to it. While ignoring how the education system itself promotes psychological harm against those very students. What was your POI?
So proposition, can you explain to me how, like, just through perspective, how would most likely black people, through perspective, how would it be possible for all black people to not be in the classroom at all then, from what you're saying? Would black people not be in the classroom from what you're saying?
What I'm trying to say is that what is based off the statistics is that most black people cannot be in the classroom because of the previous harms that's being presented by them. Okay. Our second argument is backlash. Public reaction to proposition's implementation of the resolution will undermine their goals. The controversy over current discussions of race in K-12 education demonstrates that public is not ready to endorse government-mandated discussions of race. Laws and movements have limited discussions of race, banned books, silenced teachers, and even overrun school boards to avoid educating students about race. The government-led actions like the proposition will cause more backlash. The harms outlined below will only get worse. Reporters Joe Heim and Lori Raza wrote in 22. Critical race theory laws have teachers scared, confused, and self-censoring to give some children some sanitized, watered-down versions of history that doesn't address the truth. Educators say they have to be extra careful, concerned that the material they present to students or parents will make them uncomfortable. They worry that assigning the wrong book could land them in hot water or even out of a job. Side proposition will cause a chilling effect in education. We'll see further restrictions on the discussions of race in schools. The harm will especially hurt black students who predominantly attend schools that are already under-resourced. Now, onto the proposition's case. The framing. No implementations. They must defend implementations. We need to see how it actually affects minority students and not just be like, it's a good idea, so let's make them paint out the impacts. And two, we have to oppose. Our role as the opposition is not only to show the proposition is a bad idea, we're not obligated to defend an alternative or inverse of the motion. If we show that the proposition's model is flawed, we win. Now, onto the civic engagement argument. Firstly, the argument assumes that schools will have the requisite resources to effectively teach and discuss race. Our first argument shows that many schools don't have those resources, which prevents these discussions from being as effective as they must be to boost civic engagement, which they don't. And two, our backlash arguments proves that there will be no good civic engagement. In fact, this turns their argument against because any civic engagement will be directed towards limiting discussions of race in school. Their second argument, misinfo. Firstly, their first argument is that they forget the ways in which minority students predominantly attend underfunded schools. Receiving textbooks that are outdated means we won't learn our history because we don't have the funds for it. Because of unfunded buildings, we black people will continue to be unaware about our lineage and won't learn any knowledge about it. 2. Highlighting race doesn't remove misinformation. The popularity of BLM movement amidst a high level of misinformation shows people are more involved than ever, but we'll still see conspiracies propagate. And 3. Call supply our backlash argument. Backlash against the proposition will be rooted in misinformation and misconceptions about race. And finally, their appreciation argument. Firstly, cross-apply our first two arguments of false hope and backlash. These are crucial since false hope won't lead to any appreciation and that subsequently leads to more backlash. Minority students can't appreciate their culture if they're not in the room where it's being taught because they're suspended. And 2, we cannot learn without outdated textbooks and no money. If there are no funds to learn about their history, the black kids cannot be appreciative since there's nothing to appreciate. And for all those reasons, I oppose the resolution.
Hear, hear. We thank the speaker for those fine remarks. We then call on the second speaker for the proposition to continue the debate for their side of the House. Hear, hear.
I'm Christian Warren. I'll be speaking as the second speaker for the proposition. First, I would like to go over what exactly. Oh, okay. All right. I am Christian Warren. I will be speaking for second in proposition. I will be first going over my opponent's case, and then I'll be moving on to some extensions. Is anyone not ready? All right. First off, I would like to talk about my opponent's framing, which is about if they criticize our approach to something. First off, my opponent does not give any solvency to what exactly should we do about this. We give a clear opportunity as well as a way for something to be done rather than them just criticizing our approach to it. Of course, there will be some form of, backlash, not backlash, there will be some form of, of course there will be some form of problem in our approach, but all solutions have problems at first, but then they will all as well as have their solutions, and they eventually work out. Second, I would like to go over their argument of false hope. We do not produce false hope. We produce help. Progress is possible. Civil rights ending of civil rights, e.g., civil rights ending of slavery and voter right and racism has the potential to end in basically this idea of racism. People can.
POI.
I hear dissent.
You say progress is possible, but what progress has happened when we have things like the prison industrial complex?
Could you repeat that?
Like, how is progress possible when we have things like the prison industrial complex or like the school or prison pipeline?
Progress is possible given the fact that throughout the years, situations have been worse, and we have seen differences in the status quo, showing that progress is eventually achievable as long as we continue to try it. Now I would be going over their backlash argument. It is a try or fail for the proposition. We must try and represent our minority students in the classroom. If we do what tried for representation of our minority students, this could lead back to our first argument of civic engagement, which would be the fact that people know about their history as well. This will lead into our civic engagement argument as well as our appreciation argument, the fact that people, one, know about their own history as well as other ethnicities, ethnicities knowing about different histories, making them more sensitive to other people's situations. we say in our framework, as far as the backlash argument, we say in our framework that we will be implementing some. All right. We say in our framework that any additional race-specific course options are to be created by school district level diversity and inclusion boards and chosen via a district-wide teacher, student, and parent vote, with examples including Latin American studies, Chinese American history, Jewish American history, and etc. Meaning that the parents, the students, and the teachers will all have an opportunity to have a say on what exactly would be going on in that situation, meaning that they wouldn't technically be backlash, given the fact that the people want this to happen, and why would they be backlash if there already is there? All right, now to extend my case. The burden of side opposition, as we said in our framework, is to prove why we should not pass the bill. The only thing that my bad. The burden of side opposition is that they should prove why we should not pass the motion. So therefore, side opposition has only been giving reasons why they haven't been giving much reasons, but they've just been criticizing what our approach is. We are taking a step forward in what exactly should be done. Of course, there would be issues, but we can work around those issues. Every problem has every solvency has a few kinks to work out. And eventually we will work those out. But it won't happen if we don't take a step in the right direction. And for all these reasons, I propose.
Thank you so much. We thank the speaker for those excellent remarks. We now like to invite the second speaker for the opposition to continue the debate for their side of the House. Hear, hear.
I am Jordan Brown, speaking for the second opposition speech. Let me know when everyone's ready, and I'll begin. Cool, assuming all is ready. I have never been so proud to oppose a motion like this today. But in this speech, side proposition has already given you amazing reasons to propose, but we still have the job of negating or opposing the resolution. So in this speech, we'll go over the framing issues of the wrong, secondly, the content on the opposition side, but lastly, refuting some of the points that were made and extending some of the points that Jaden made in his last speech on the proposition speech. First, on the framing question, it has now become the question of implementation or no implementation, or counter models or no counter model. We argue that side proposition has to defend the implementation. You cannot just say it's a good idea to have these conversations. Make them fan out the impacts of what they're actually saying. Make them paint the picture for you and not leave you to your own devices, and see what it actually entails for you. That is what we're saying that they have to do, not just have this conversation and like that's enough. In fact, that leads into one of our points about leads into our arguments about how they misinform people. But secondly, they said that we're not promoting any real motions or how we're not providing a counter model which is leaving to be done. We don't have to provide a counter model. It's a question of how we're criticizing your plan of the ways you have approached this topic. And we argue that the way you have approached it is inherently bad or going to make problems worse, which leaves us with all rooms of opposing it. Now, onto our first point of false hope. This argument is still pretty strongly sufficient due to the fact there was really no real engagement on the levels of what they say so. Our evidence about Dumas from Dumas in 2017 is that black students are constantly being suspended, police, out of class, and ISS, saying the destructive type or saying to have the problems in the room. But yet, with these so-called problems that we have in the room, how are we going to be able to learn if we're not in the room to learn at all? The side proposition brings up points about not everyone to be suspended, but sure, even if not everyone's suspended, majority of the people in the room will be suspended or will be out of class, or some of them won't have the access to get the textbooks. Side proposition does not give you any real way of explaining the fact that how are we going to get the textbooks that talk about race, or how are we going to get the teachers that are willing to come and teach about race if we constantly don't have the right teachers, or constantly don't have key teachers, or have substitute teachers for all year long. We're not going to be able to learn from what they're benefiting from, which means they're just saying a false hope. They're not providing any real mechanisms for actually helping us. They'll say that they are solving or we're a step in the right direction, but you're not. You're taking a step to nowhere, but you're not actually giving us the resources that we need in order to be able to learn from them. But next on our backlash argument, the only, actually no, go back to the false hope thing. The only other argument is progress is possible, but yet how can we have things like progress being possible if you're still not adjusting the ways that we're constantly being suspended or brought into the school to prison pipeline, which ultimately thumps what they're talking about. Because even if we're talking about race and class, the school to prison pipeline makes it where all the education that we had or the learning that we did is all for nothing, which inherently gives us another reason to negate. Now onto the backlash argument. Their only response is here that it's try or fail, but you are already failing via the fact that you're not allowing or addressing the systematic ways that we are constantly being hurt. But secondly, they said that there's civic engagement and their appreciation arguments explain this, but yet how are you going to be able to engage civically or have appreciation with unfunded textbooks? That answer has still not been provided to you all as judges, and you can't do the work for them and say they can magically do it. But secondly, they said that we can like help, but there's no way you can actually help. And they say that, remember the words of the last proposition speech. They said that the vote is based on a parent's decision or a public decision, meaning the fact that if you still have a public decision, you still have to rank races, or you create things like the oppression, they make people rank their oppressions. Some may say that we could talk about the Jewish oppression or like the Asian American oppression. That means you ultimately have to rank races in order to see what gets talked about first. They said what's talked about first, which inherently creates more backlash because people are going to get mad when they see that their race is not being the ones talked about at this very specific moment. But now let's lead on to the proposition case. First, on their argument of framing, they said that we have not provided a sufficient reason to negate, just roadblocks. But we're criticizing the way that you have approached the topic and not as sufficient enough to vote negative. We're to vote opposition. We're saying that you have picked a model that is handily bad, and we picked out the flaws of it. Now, onto the argument of civic engagement. None of the responses that Jaden made have been adequately answered to you, which means they obviously agree that they're not taking civic engagement. Our backlash argument explains how there's no civic engagement when you have to rank out oppressions or rank out races, which means that you create bad civic engagement because now you have people saying that we don't like this race because they were talking about more, or parents don't want to talk about these people inside the classroom, they were talking about themselves. Which ultimately creates more problems for people, which is a big headache, which will cause people to not want to pass their motion or have resentment throughout the discourse. Now, on their appreciation argument, there was no contextualization or contestant on any of the arguments we made here, explaining that we A, don't have the funding to appreciate ourselves, but B, things like how we don't we're not inside the classroom, we can't appreciate ourselves. How can we appreciate ourselves when we're constantly not able to learn, or don't have the textbooks to learn, or actually scared to go to class because our teachers aren't teaching us the right things? But lastly, on their misinformation argument, there's no way that they can actually inform us, which they agree with because there was no responses made to our arguments. We give you examples of Black Lives Matter, how even though race was the center of discourse, we still see how the misinformation was still so prominent, meaning that they will still be misinformed and causing more problems and not actually informing the public on what they think about. But lastly, our backlash argument thumps this as well because it shows that even though we may think we're doing a good thing, we still have parents getting mad and still causing backlash. Thank you.
Thank you. We thank the opposition speaker for those fine remarks. We invite the third speaker for the proposition to continue the debate for their side of the House. Hear, hear.
Before I begin my speech again, I would like to quickly go over what my third speech would be on. So in this format of debate, my third speech will be basically clearing or crystallizing the key points of clash throughout what has previously already happened right now. So, got timer. So, I'll be giving the third proposition speech of this debate, starting when everybody's ready. All right. Because education is the salvation of the soul, we proudly propose today's resolution. Resolved, race-specific curriculum should be included in K-12 education in the United States. Throughout this debate, there have been three main points of clash. Those 3 points being, does the opposing side have to give you a reason to oppose or just to not propose? Secondly, does which side best values history? And thirdly, which side best upholds the duty of education in democracy? Firstly, on to our first point of clash. The opposing side gives you all the reasons not to propose, not to oppose this motion, but not to propose. They're not arguing for themselves. They said in their first speech, and I quote, our problem with the proposition is not that race should be excluded from the curriculum. Rather, we criticize their approach to implementing their model. They want to frame this debate around criticizing our plan and criticizing our plan alone. However, these are the arguments that they made are just disadvantages. Every plan that has ever been made has always had a disadvantage. They've always had a disadvantage before. But just because there are disadvantages doesn't mean that we should still take to not propose this motion. Just because there's something wrong with there's like a small thing that is wrong with the plan, because there's just like a small, tiny disadvantage, a tiny setback, doesn't mean that it easily outweighs any other good thing that happens. Now continuing on, our second point of clash, which is which side best values history. To that, I say, of course, team proposition best upholds history, because we best value the side of history more than side opposition. Side proposition's arguments, our arguments prove that our arguments prove that we uphold this by looking at appreciation. The main idea of our appreciation argument, which has been misconstrued by team side opposition, they see it as an actual argument, or like a main standpoint or practical argument, when this argument is actually a principle. This is a principle argument, and it's made this, and how principle arguments work, they're made to say it like this is a good thing. This is a morally good thing. For example,
POI.
no, thank you. For example, think about when you were younger, or maybe like a small child, and your parents would always tell you, eat your vegetables. The vegetables are very good for you. Well, they are good for you. Vegetables have nutrients that help the growth of the human body. History provides information about where you came from and the struggles you and your people have endured, as well as where other people has come from and the struggles they have endured. My whole point with this, so the main point of the argument, no thank you, the main point of the argument that is appreciation is that being appreciated that you're receiving history or being taught about your past. Because being taught about your past is a good thing for you, as I made the analogy with vegetables.
POI.
I'll hear your point.
How can we be appreciative if the history that you are going to teach as the prop is going to get mingled and disoriented?
All right, let me move on to, all right, I'll explain, I probably will answer that question moving on to my third point of clash. My third point of clash is the duty of education in democracy, and which by team proposition easily upholds. The duty of education in a democracy is to receive the information is to give the information of history to participate, so the students or the children of tomorrow will participate more in society. Our two arguments, civic engagement and misinformation, shows how side proposition follows this responsibility. Civic engagement tells us that by learning race in schools will lead to more positive impacts. We would see more people voting. We would see more people showing up to City Hall and town meetings, and overall becoming more active members of our community and more active members of society. Our third contention, misinformation, tells us that schools have been giving watered-down information to students about the history of race, because overall, race or being taught history is a hard subject to deal with. So teachers have problems, or teachers who know like the bad things that happened in the past will find it very hard to explain. So they either don't explain it or try their best to water it down so where they don't look like the bad guy. But it's because of this that we don't have, because of this, which is the current status quo, that team opposition is failing to show the duty of education in democracy. Without the valuable information, we can't really achieve this duty. So by proposing this motion, this responsibility will be met. Continuing on, they made their backlash arguments. They're saying that backlash can't happen because people, once again, people are upset, or people have lost the, not lost it, but people are against it. And because they are against it, that they shouldn't follow, because they're against this plan, we shouldn't follow it. However, Ruby Bridges at Little Rock Central has shown that even through with backlash going on, like Ruby Bridges had, there was like a lot of people going against of what was going on with Ruby Bridges going into Little Rock Central. They didn't want a black girl in a white school. And because of that, other people, and because of that backlash, even with the backlash that was going on, Ruby Bridges still pushed forward and managed to make a change. So now we have integrated schools where I'm able to sit in a classroom with my best friend Vincent Lito all together in a shared room. And with that, I end the side of proposition, and I stand, well, thank you.
Thank you for those remarks. We're now at a place in the debate where the opposition gets 2 speeches in a row. One that'll be 6 minutes, that'll close a substantive portion of the debate. They then will follow with a 3-minute speech where they'll try to persuade all of us that we should vote opposition. But then, of course, proposition gets to respond. So, opposition, the floor is yours.
Thank you. All right. Yeah. Excuse me for a second. All right. Is anybody not ready? I'll begin. Because education policy must grapple with the reality and not fantasy, we proudly oppose. Now, we need to focus on framing this through a pragmatic view. Let's talk about the 3 main points of clash. First, we need to frame the issue to where it's more so reality and not a hypothetical and fantasy view of where this will happen if everything goes right. We need to think about it logistically and reality-wise. 2, we need to think about how the government will realistically use these resources. We've seen previously, as I brought up before, that the government isn't particularly known to use these resources to the best, especially during civic matters. And 3, is now really the best time? No. Considering that, like the proposition just mentioned of how Ruby Bridges was and the backlash that happened, this generation has become a lot more sensitive to topics such as that. So it's now really the best time to be bringing up race in matters like this. Now, the proposition is not the best side to be seeing all of this from. We need to see this through a pragmatic standpoint, which the opposition is doing. Thinking about this realistically shows the government isn't the best hope. We've seen that Congress is extremely slow when it comes to civic matters, like the prop. The government won't do what they say. They won't do what they say they will in the props arguments. They make the government out to be great people who always listen, right? But if that was the case, America would be a lot better. The proposition is thinking this from a hypothetical view that everything will work out and fall in place. When in reality, we cannot ensure that. Cross-apply our false hope argument, and this adds on to this. You're giving false hope to us to a reality that will be better when we know this is not the case. A lot of southern states that are relatively still racist. On top of that, many northern states do not have a high African American population. Implementing the proposition's plan will make things very shaky and difficult to have a complete coverage on. Let's keep in mind, in our second argument, backlash, we've explained how this will still cause massive backlash in groups. Controversy will still be high after the implementation. And with that being said, there will be a negative civic engagement, concerning that it will be oriented on what just happened, and that will be about race, not the positive civic engagement that they want. The opposition really wants you, the audience, to understand that we want you to view this debate as real as possible. By thinking the same way as the prop, we will not be able to see the full severity of what may happen if the implementation happens. Now, onto the proposition's case. Considering that they said we give no solvency, as the opposition, it's not particularly our job to show solvency. We are trying to negate them and show the best ways of why this will not work. In our first constructive, we said that we need to, even a little thing can show that we should not vote for the propositions. We given multiple arguments on my side and my teammate Jordan's side that the proposition is not doing the best job of showing why this plan will work. As I will mention again, our false hope and backlash arguments are showing the 2 main points of why this is such a bad idea from the proposition, or most of them not so a bad idea, or why this won't work in the way they intended to. Now, along with my first argument that I brought up, the appreciation argument, like I said, let's cross-apply our two arguments. That will not happen. They're trying to give false hope and show that the communities will be appreciative when we cannot have anything to appreciate if we're still going to be oppressed either way. Now, let's see it on a bigger picture. Per se, we do implement this. And what will happen? Louisiana is a southern state, and we know from history that the southern states are not the best with race. Keeping this in mind, where might this happen? Concerning that we still need to, like the proposition said, we need to pick teachers to choose this, and they will have a parent vote, like the prop said, and my teammate Jordan brought up. This parent vote can lead to very bad, and like my teammate Jordan said, this can lead to whose race will be better per se. Who might be better? Who will get a chance in getting so-and-so? That is not what we want whatsoever. Now, they said that the prop values history more, which racists do not want that whatsoever. They do not care about what history is valued more. They want to water it down as much as possible to show you that you are not valued, which we do not want. We're trying to show it in a way to where what the opposition is trying to do is that this is a bad idea overall. That is what the main point of the opposition is trying to get at. Now, the proposition said that being taught your history is good. They'll be taught a false history to one that is not correlating with the real history and the real severity of what's happened to people of color. They also mentioned that civic engagements tell us more and good with interaction. No civic engagement will be noticed from this, but like I said, no civic engagement will be positive. It will only be negative, negatively affecting what they are trying to go for. And finally, not all black students go to poor schools, they brought up. Correct, but most minorities do. We're talking about race, nothing specific. But what the prop and the opposition are mainly focusing on, as in for race, are African Americans or people in color. We're trying to include all races, but those are the main races. They said a parent vote in Prop 2, meaning that racists can still alter and oppress people of color, which will not do any good for the proposition's case. And finally, they wanted to clear and crystallize what's been covered. What they are trying to crystallize is a false reality that's going to be implemented if the proposition goes through with this. For all these reasons, I proudly oppose today's resolution.
Hear, hear. We have reached the point of the debate where we have the final two speeches. Opposition will have a 3-minute speech, followed by a 3-minute speech for the proposition. So to conclude the debate for their side of the House, opposition reply. Hear, hear.
All right. Before we start, this speech will entail the key questions and reasons to vote, but reasons to vote, extending of the opposition case, then going to the proposition case, and then a quick underview of what the round breaks down to. Okay. This is 3 minutes, right? Very cool. Start. Assuming everyone's ready, I'll start now. I'm still so proud to oppose this very motion. As Jaden brought up in his last speech, there's 3 core questions that need to be answered here. It's a question of framing. Secondly, a question of, is this a good time? But lastly, this is a good place where the government is actually going to use the resources. To answer these questions, we were answered in the last speech and will be extended in this speech. So first, on the question, is the government using this in a good way? There's still been no examples on how we've already disapproved all the answers about progress and all the sorts, explaining that there's no real way that we can see this actually happening. We look at through a realistic format or a realistic way. We have argued that we get less funded textbooks, less funded teachers, no substitute teachers, or no teachers at all. That are key reasons to negate already. We've shown how without addressing these other problems first, the proposition will literally do nothing. It's like putting a Band-Aid on a bullet wound. Nothing will actually happen because we're not addressing the key formations or the key forms that allow for things to happen. Remember the examples of the prison and school pipeline. When we're constantly being suspended and constantly being put in ISS, it pushes it into the prison and school pipeline. How can you learn about your history if you're not in the classroom or you're constantly being indulged in that pipeline? The answer is you can't, which means that we don't get access to it. So under a realistic format or a realistic phrasing, you simply cannot propose this motion because there's no way of it seeing how we can actually get adequate resources for it, which explains how our crew optimism argument still stands. We explain how there's no funding, no teachers, no books, no anything. Next on the argumentation of is this a good time to do so? The answer is no. We articulated that there's no funding for it, so we can't have a good time to do it. But lastly, due to the high amounts of backlash and sensitive topics that we have right now, we see that it's not a good time to do so. We articulated that the side proposition is the use of a people's vote will inherently rank races and rank oppressions, which means that you have to put yourself in a tough spot now and deal with the question of, dang, what race do I put first? Do I put African Americans, Asian Americans, Indian Americans? Which do you put first? Indigenous people. Now you have the question of these core races that are always at the forefront of the problem now, and you have to see which one do I put first. The answer puts you in a tough spot, which leads you to high resentment and high backlash inside the area, which means that people, A, won't want to talk about it, so they won't talk about race at all, or B, they'll just completely change and want hearing more horrible civic engagement, which ultimately defeats their first contention as well. Now, onto the contention of their side. We've already won the example of how we have to have them implemented, and there's no just fiating past or just trying to make us move past. We have to explain how this actually affects us. We've already answered their appreciation argument, saying we can't appreciate ourselves if we're constantly being outside of schools and no funding. Secondly, how there's no way we can appreciate ourselves on civic engagement if we create backlash and high resentment in that area. But lastly, misinformation, how you're constantly misinforming us, which means you have to negate.
We thank the opposition for those impassioned remarks. We now will have the final speech of the debate. The proposition will close the debate for their side of the House and for all of us. Hear, hear.
All right. Is everyone ready? Still today, I am still so proud to propose this motion, and today I will be giving the reasons why we won this debate. So first, I would like to say that we went on framework. First off, my colleague Derek Norris constantly stated in his third speech that they only give disadvantages, meaning disadvantages/drawbacks. They constantly give us drawbacks, but the only way to make progress is if we accept these drawbacks with this progress. And if we do, we are taking a step in the correct or right direction. Given the fact that side proposition has shown that there has been multiple advantages to proposing or implementing this resolution, such as more civic engagement, which will lead to a better or more representative democratic system, which is better for the entirety of the country, which is a practical argument. We also go down to a principle, to the fact where different ethnic groups, as well as maybe your own, as well as people of color or any other group, get to learn about, well, their own history or their own group. This is a generally good information to know. This is having a principle and practical. That is another reason why side proposition wins. So, given the fact that one side opposition only gives us drawbacks, and the fact that team proposition has given possibilities on what we can do in the future to actually better our society, you should vote side proposition, because one, we are leading towards a better future for our young people, and as well as people even further than that. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and we thank all the speakers for an excellent performance. Ladies and gentlemen, let's give them one more round of applause, please. Judges, we have now reached the point where we have to make a decision. We had side proposition affirming the motion, side opposition opposing the motion. And young men, and when I call out your name, if you would raise your hand, judges are also choosing who they feel was the most outstanding speaker in the debate. Mr. Norris, if you'd raise your hand. Mr. Warren, Mr. Brown, Mr. Williams. Okay, thank you.
As the judges are making their decisions, I want to take a moment, first of all, thank all of you, to thank our Arthur School families that are here, and to thank the young men from the Dolores Taylor Arthur School who are here with us today. You know, when you look at schools and you get caught up in the day-to-day of school and making sure that everything is where it needs to be and that it's all in order, and those days aren't always easy. But it gets easier when you look out and you see every little prince who calls himself a student at the Arthur School. And so we thank you, young men, for being here. I'll also say that as we're beginning these introductions, I had a little moment. And what caused that moment is that many of you don't know that Dolores Taylor Arthur was beginning her career or time as a singer, as an opera singer. And she was a student at Xavier, and there was an opera, Carmen, on this very campus where she was in the chorus. The problem was, because of segregation, her parents could not come and see her perform. Years later, she got to come to this room where her son presided over meetings of the Student Government Association as its third African-American president. But today it's emotional because here we are in this place where her parents could not go, in a place where she was barely welcomed because of the color of her skin. And there is a debate about race in this place, in a school, in her name. And I'm thankful to Loyola University for allowing us to do that. I need Mr. Caden Ward and Mr. Dwayne Powell to come up for a second. Being a school leader is tough but beautiful work. It's rewarding. Someone told me this morning that they wouldn't trade places with me. I will tell you I wouldn't trade places with them. Not that there's anything wrong with them, but because this is important. And this is, of all the things that I have gotten to do in life, this is my most important life's work. And what makes it easier to be in this work is the support of our leader. Joy, excellence, you feel that when you're in the presence of Dr. Avis Williams. The first time I met her, I was inspired. I love the fact that she's willing to walk the halls of my little school, interact with our young men, sit down with me and ask me, what is it that we need? And not just ask that question, but respond. And so I am grateful here, and on behalf of the Dolores Taylor Arthur School for Young Men, want to extend our appreciation, our admiration, our respect, and our love to the Superintendent of NOLA Public Schools, Dr. Avis Williams. Dr. Avis Williams, if you will come up. Thank you. Mr. Timmons, are your folks ready?
We will
You
have
wanna sit down?
our esteemed judges, once they make the decision, offer a few comments about the debate.
Would you like me to announce it first and then comments be made? Which would you prefer, sir?
Whatever you would prefer.
I'll announce it, and then I'll let the comments be made.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Mr. Ziegler, Mr. Swift, thank you both for your work. And you. Mr. Ziegler and Mr. Swift are two outstanding young teachers at our school. It's amazing to see the love and dedication on display each day, and so I thank you. This moment of requisite tension. There should be 6 in you. So the team that wins the superintendent's prize, but winning the reserve prize for finishing in second place is side opposition, Jaden Williams and Jordan Brown. Gentlemen. And winning today's debate, Mr. Christian Warren, Mr. Derek Norris, and Mr. Larson Dillon of Side Proposition. The judges chose an outstanding speaker in today's debate. From Side Opposition, Mr. Jordan Brown. And before I turn it over to the judges to give their feedback, I have to tell you, debate's very important. I look back at my own life and I understand that I would not be where I am today, for whatever that's worth, without debate. And my vision is that debate is not something just competitive that happens in-house, not something that happens around the state or around the region, that it's something that happens around the country, for us, for the Arthur School. That's my commitment to it. And I would be remiss if I did not recognize one of our own who has been recognized around the country. When hundreds of students gather at a tournament and they recognize and award a small percentage of those, this young man has found himself winning awards at Apple Valley, at the Blake School in Minnesota, at the University of California, Berkeley, at Yale, at Stanford, and at Emory. Wrap your minds around that. This young man, this young African-American man from this little Title I school in New Orleans is recognized around the country. Mr. Jordan Brown. And we're proud. So, Mr. Timmons, I will turn this over to you. Let your critics give their feedback, and then Superintendent Williams will close us out.
Sure. We can start from my right, and everyone can offer a fairly quick explanation of what they thought about the debate. Judge Wicker?
I don't know if I can do this, because right now, the United States Supreme Court is going to take up, yet again, more questions about freedom of speech. And it will have to do with Facebook and that thing called X and all that stuff. But the bottom line is, why is it so important? Because our free speech, that's what you're doing, is the key to our society. So I have to say, I think the winners won, because it's really hard to bring yourself to say it's okay to just pretend entire parts of our history didn't exist. Because, so, you know, the win, the lose, you have a couple judges here, we have to call them like they are, not like we want them to be. So there's that interesting thing. All I can tell you, folks, is whatever it is that you do as you move on, the fact that you debate and you stated, all four of you, state your point, you stated them clearly and succinctly, and you had arguments, and even if I don't agree with your arguments, which are, well, there are a lot of problems, there are always a lot of problems, but you stated your arguments and you promoted your arguments. That is absolutely fabulous, and you can't learn that anyplace else, so thank you.
And I won't repeat what Judge Wicker just said, but I agree with her 100%. The fact that you young men are here arguing in front of a crowd of people when you're in high school is very impressive. The first time I argued in front of a crowd of people was in law school, and that was very difficult for me. So you will have crossed that road already. All of you are very articulate. You showed that you believed in your argument, and that means a lot, especially in a courtroom. Because if I, as a judge, determine that you don't believe in your argument, you look like maybe you do not believe in your argument, then I feel like, okay, this person's already lost. But be it you're on the side with the stronger argument or on the side with a weaker argument, sometimes the other side just have the best topic and can provide the best arguments. And sometimes it's hard to overcome that, and it's okay. But you stuck by what you believed in, and the job was excellently done by all of you. So thank God for the Dolores Taylor Author School for Young Men, that you can engage in this type of behavior at such a young age in your careers.
All right, I will not stand because I don't need to stand. I will say during the debate by all four of you, I actually voted for the opposition. A few arguments that persuaded me, not that I'm personally in opposition of race-based education, but based on how this debate went. First, the pro should offer something tangible that you will do, and the negative should offer disadvantages and drawbacks to that, which I thought the negative did in this debate. The opposition was most persuasive in that they presented arguments about why the pro side offered false hope. Mainly because the government hasn't necessarily done a whole lot of good for people of color over centuries. Secondly, I think there is a risk that there would be some level of backlash given who controls the voting on this particular policy, which is the community, parents, etc. And as a result, that gets to people probably trying to rank races and figure out who gets preferential treatment to start such policies. So I vote opposition, but congratulations to all four of you. Very good debate.
Excellent job, young men. I think it was a full-throated embracement of equity, excellence, and joy. I really enjoyed it. And what I think I need you all to understand that around the city, around the country, there are schools that don't allow conversations like this. There are districts that don't allow conversations like this. There are schools that don't have debate teams like you have. and I need you to understand what you have, value what you have, bring young men who are in your school who are not on the team into the team to just value everything that is debate, because it is life-changing. It'll move you forward. It will get you connections and all of that. But there is one ask that I had of you, to use your voice in the way that you did in this space, in your school, and in your community as well. Because there is an attack on free speech. People want to roll things back to the way things were, to the good old days. And we need folks like yourselves to offer these full-throated embracements of your truth, of your justice, of your voice. And I think you did that today, but I need you to also do that all the time. We can talk later about my vote, things along those lines. There are things that I thought both teams did incredibly well. There are a couple things we'll talk about that you can work on. But ultimately, at the end of the day, debate is a winner here from my perspective, and you all did an amazing job. Thank you so much.
I would like to focus on a word that was said at the very beginning of all of this, and that was civility. In a landscape where the sound bites are the king of the day or queen of the day, what you just embarked upon was totally different, right? Framing together arguments and a hidden skill within debate that each team really put forth was your listening skills. Yes. Right, so here you are, you put together your arguments, you're well prepared, you deliver it, and as the opposition or the opponents are speaking, y'all are listening and then responding in the moment. And you're doing it with civility and intelligence. So please take that with you. I thought both teams did a great job today, but that hidden skill of listening was really, really on display today, so great job.
So I agree very much with what Mr. Timmons shared with everyone about, and Mr. Kalix about the importance of civility and what each of you are bringing and investing in doing something like this. Congratulations, as I know that is to the affirmative for winning. I, like Ms. Jordan, voted for the opposition. I do want to point out, even though this is sort of an exhibition, it hurts, man, when you care about it and your side doesn't necessarily come out on top in the debate. And so I feel you. It hurts, but you'll keep going. And it hurts because we love it, and we love to be able to do this. And I appreciate all of you investing what you've invested into this great skill. Debate changed my life. Debate helps me every day of my life, and I'm proud to be a part of this with all of you. I did vote for the opposition because it came down to a decision for me of taking the first step or stepping too soon. And are there other problems that we have to deal with first? In particular, I thought there was an argument that could be made when Mr. Norris said, it's like your parents telling you the vegetables are good for you. The argument I would have made there is, what happens if you can't get the vegetables at all? And so I didn't attach that to my decision because I did choose to take the realistic point of view and the idea of we're putting a Band-Aid on a bullet wound. And how can you learn something if you're not in the room in the first place? So those messages spoke to me a great deal. I do think as well the importance of having the discussion is really, I don't sit in discussions like this very often, and I need to sit in them more. And so I appreciate all of you, and congratulations to each of you.
I want to commend all of you for your dignity and presence. You all have very, very strong humanity that comes across, and you're very thoughtful, and that is immediately apparent. And that's unusual to see in adults, much less high school students. So great job on everything that you've accomplished thus far, and I think that you're going to continue to accomplish. I wanted to just tag on to what Mr. Earhart said about we don't sit in discussions like this very often, and we don't because civil discourse is very scarce in this society. And being part of this today and listening to all of you, and I was persuaded by both sides, frankly. I had a really hard time coming out with my vote. But I am very hopeful listening to you and watching you that we have an opportunity to improve the level of discourse in our community, in our state, and in our country. I look to all of you.
Thank you so much to our judges. Let's give our judges a big round of applause. I appreciate your time. And definitely appreciate the feedback that you've given our scholars today, because our role as educators and as leaders is to support them to greatness, to excellence, and to make sure that they have the tools and resources that they need in order to be successful. And part of that is feedback, so thank you for that. To our scholars, first of all, congratulations to both sides. You did an amazing job. I mentioned my core values earlier on, so joy. Wow, my heart is full. Oftentimes, I am defending our youth because one thing that adults tend to do sometimes is villainize and sometimes even criminalize our young people. And one of the things that I always say is, if we want better young people, be better humans. And you all are amazing humans, and I appreciate the effort that you put into your work today and the passion in which you delivered your speeches. So when I think about excellence, your preparation for today, even during it, it was interesting for me to watch in real time what it looks like for great debaters to actually prepare to deliver their speech and to pivot as necessary and to be agile as necessary. And you're right, a lot of adults do not have the ability to do what you all did so masterfully today. So I commend you for your excellence and for the efforts that you've made to get to this point today, and know that we are in good hands as it relates to the future of our community, of our nation, and beyond. Equity. You know, one of the things that really struck me as I was listening was the opposition. What I heard was, it is difficult to imagine a world where we can move forward with teaching Black history as long as systemic racism is so prevalent. That's what I heard. Because essentially what you were saying is that how or why would it matter as long as we've got these challenges, these obstacles, these barriers that are in place that prevent equity and equality from existing in the first place. And I appreciate you lifting that up, because as a proponent for wanting to ensure that our scholars know their history, and as a proponent for believing that school is the right place for those discussions to be had, I also have a true appreciation for thinking of it from both sides and understanding what are some things that we may need to unpack as educators and as leaders before this can be actualized. And today really helped me frame that in a way that I wasn't expecting. So I appreciate the thoughtfulness and the willingness, the leadership, the knowledge that you all had and that you brought to the table today. And so again, on behalf of all of NOLA Public Schools and the Orleans Parish School Board, I thank each and every one of you for being here today. Thank you, Mr. Arthur, for your willingness. Y'all, all I did was ask, hey, would you be willing to allow your scholars to participate in a Black history debate? and this happened, so I am so grateful to you for your willingness and for your drive and for your leadership and for the example that you're setting for our young men, and giving them the opportunities that you're absolutely right. A lot of scholars do not have this opportunity, and it's possible because of your leadership, your passion, and your commitment to excellence and to our community. So again, thank you all so much for being here today. Congratulations to both sides of our debate. Let's give them another big round of applause. To all of our scholars, I want you to know that I see you, I hear you, and I love you. And I thank you all so much for being here today. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Williams. Thank you, Mr. Arthur. Thank you to Loyola University for having us. Thank you to our esteemed panel of judges. Certainly, last but not least, thank you to the scholars who debated so eloquently and so effectively. One of the things I want to remind all of us is that Black history is not just for Black people, right? And so there is a vacuum of the knowledge of Black history, not only among Black people, but among American people and American history. And we have to remember that Black history is American history. Mr. Arthur so graciously asked that I would close as we were intending to open this event with the singing of Lift Every Voice and Sing. And so if you would all please stand. Lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring, ring with the harmonies of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise high as the listening skies. Let it resound loud as the rolling seas. Sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us, facing the rising sun of a new day begun. Let us march on till victory is won. Thank you all for being here today. What an extraordinary display. I don't think it can be overstated what you gentlemen, as they say, came and left it all out on the floor. So thank you all so much for being here. Thank you to everyone who took the time out of their day to be a part of this. The video for this will be posted on the YouTube channel of NOLA PS very, very soon, and we'll send out the link to everyone to make sure that they receive it. Again, to Mr. Arthur, what you are doing, I got to meet this man 20 plus years ago as I was a speech and debate student at St. Augustine High School, and he was working then at Jesuit High School, and it is a blessing to come full circle to share this moment with you, and the work that you are doing at the Arthur School is just remarkable, extraordinary, and so necessary. And so thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you all. Have a great rest of your Black History Month.
Thank you.